Hey B Squad, it's Chrissy B and I'm coming at you with another video today. I was having a little bit, sorry, I just bumped my desk. I was having a little bit of an interesting conversation with one of my friends the other day. And it was essentially about like fat people fears and are they rational or are they irrational? And I think a lot of people will have varying opinions about that. But I just wanted to talk with you guys about it, talk to you about some of my fears as a fat person and some other fears that my friend was talking about as well. I've had some personal experiences with these fears, so I feel like they're relevant. They just might not be relevant all the time. And I feel like it's pretty sad that, at least for me personally, and I know for a lot of other fat people I know, these fears really stop us from going out and doing things that would actually be better for us than sitting at home. So, for example, um, I don't like meet up with friends very often. I don't go out very often because of some of my fears around being fat and things that could happen and people's perception of me. And that's something I'm really trying to work on is like the only opinions that really matter are mine. And I would say my immediate family, not as in like aunts and uncles, grandparents, but like my mom, because I know she cares about me like unconditionally and loves me and doesn't judge me. My fiance, I know he loves me unconditionally and doesn't judge me. And then I would also say my children. Children are kind of iffy though because they're just honest, but it comes across very mean. Some children, my child, my little boy is still very young, and my niece that stays with me is old enough at this point that she knows like, oh, I probably shouldn't say those things because it could hurt someone's feelings. But between the ages of like 2 and I'm gonna say 5, if their parents have taught them to be like respectful about other people, and probably all the way up to maybe even 10 if their parents don't teach them like, hey, don't be mean to people, don't say certain things to people, certain questions are inappropriate, whatever. So anyways, let's get into this video. I think I have 9 or 10. I'm looking down at my phone because I don't want to forget any of them because I think there's going to be, I mean, a lot of people won't, but there's going to be a lot of people who have experienced this if they've been significantly overweight. Um, so the first one that I have is amusement park fear. And it's not a fear of being in the park, it's a fear of the rides. So like amusement park rides, Six Flags, Disneyland, things like that. There are definitely some rides that if you're a bigger person, you'll fit no problem. But there are also rides. I've gotten on one specifically, I think it was at Six Flags, and I was smaller than I am now. I think I was maybe 80 pounds smaller than I am now. And I remember getting in that ride, and actually there's been 2. So I got in that ride and I'm short as well. So I was like trying to jump up into the seat, and then I pushed the thing down. I was trying to snap it, and my arms are short and I'm big, and I couldn't get the buckle. And I thought it was not going to snap because I was too fat for the ride, and it would have been so embarrassing to have to get off and, you know, that whole rigmarole because everybody sits pretty close to you too. So if you get off, they're going to know why you got off, and that's just very embarrassing. I feel like that could be a viral video on YouTube, and that would be a fear of mine. So anyways, the worker comes over and I'm like, I can't get my belt snapped. And luckily they were able to, and they like forced it a little bit, which I was really thankful for. But that is a huge fear. Amusement park rides. Like I love amusement parks, so that really sucks. But some of the seats, they're just not big enough, and every time you go to ride a ride, unless you know for sure it has a bigger seat, you always run the risk of not fitting or somebody saying you exceed the weight limit. So that's number 1. Do you guys think That's irrational fear or irrational fear. So for all of these fears that I talk about, sorry, I'm looking at my phone. For all of these fears that I talk about, comment down below and let me know if you think it's a rational fear, irrational fear, or even if it's something that you've experienced. You guys can also put in comments about like fears that I don't mention, because obviously there's going to be a lot more than, 9 or 10. Okay, so the second irrational fear that I have is going on an airplane. It's not because I'm afraid of flying or afraid of heights. It's because I'm afraid of not fitting in the seat. And I know that I could squeeze into a seat, right? But the big fear is the belt going to be big enough, or am I going to have to ask for an extension? I would be mortified. And the second part of that fear is if whoever is sitting next to me is just grossed out by me being fat or doesn't feel comfortable and goes and asks the flight attendant to have me get off the plane. What really spun that fear off for me, what kicked it off, was the freaking Tyler Perry movie, what's it called? Why Did I Get Married? So there is a scene, I love Tyler Perry movies, by the way. But there is a scene in that movie where a husband and a wife get on the plane. It's a husband, a wife, and a friend. They have 3 seats, and the husband sits next to the friend, and then the wife is sitting in her own seat. If you haven't seen the movie, go see it. You'll understand why, and it was a terrible situation. But the wife gets on, and she's a bigger lady. She, like in the video, I think at this point, I'm a little bit bigger than she was in that movie. So she goes to her seat and she sits down, and there's this crabby old man who gets up, walks to the front of the plane, and then here comes a flight attendant saying, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but you need to get off the plane. You should have purchased 2 seats for your size." And if something like that happened to me, I would die. I would be so mortified. And I haven't ridden a plane. I haven't gone on a plane since I've been this weight. The last time I rode a plane, I was about 75 pounds smaller than I am now. And the seat fit me fine. However, the belt was very tight. And, I go to the window, so I just kind of like lean towards the window. So the person sitting next to me, I was hoping that I wouldn't make them feel uncomfortable or, touch them. And it's so weird. I don't know if anybody else has that fear, whether they're fat or skinny. When you sit on a plane, are you worried about making another person uncomfortable because your body touches them? And I know for me, the reason why I'm afraid of that is because I am fat. If I was thin, I wouldn't worry that much about my arm touching somebody. But the way that I grew up, and a lot of society views fat as really, really disgusting. And so I'm always like, I don't want to gross this person out, which is a whole nother story, really sad. But that's fear number 2. So fear number 2 is a fear of sitting on a plane seat, not fitting the belt, or having somebody say, "Hey, you need to buy 2 seats because you're too big." I would be mortified. Okay, next fear. Oh, I kind of touched on this earlier in the video. So number 3 is like, if you haven't seen a friend or a family member for a while and you've put on weight, or you had a plan to lose weight and you didn't lose weight. That is another really big fear that I have. So there's been a lot of times where people will be like, "Hey, do you want to go grab coffee?" Or, "Hey, do you want to go hang out? Do you want to get drinks?" Like whatever it might be. And I'm always just like, maybe next week. Maybe we'll get together next month. Because then I kind of put this thought, like I start this thought process of like, oh, if I don't meet up with them for a month, then I could lose some weight in 30 days and I'll look better and I'll feel better and they won't judge me. And it's such a warped idea, because if somebody is truly your friend, if somebody truly cares about you, they're obviously going to notice if you've put on a bunch of weight. They're obviously going to notice if you said you were going to lose weight and you never lost weight. but they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, she's disgusting, but, and that's what goes in my head. And so it's a fear that I have. I think that one's partly rational, partly irrational. And this is my thought process behind that. As I've explained before, I come from an extremely, extremely judgmental family. And I've had several experiences, like, and I know my sister didn't mean any harm when she said this, but when I'm going to meet one of her friends, she had to make sure that she let him know that I was the fat sister and that I was a big girl. So like when I met him, he wouldn't be shocked. And I don't think that was necessarily her intention. And I don't think she went into it with like just to be hurtful or anything. But it's a real thing that happened. Like she wouldn't have explained like my other sister. She would have been like, oh yeah, my sister's coming. By the way, she's really skinny. That never would have happened. Like she just would have been like, oh yeah, my sister's going to come hang out with us. That's it. But for me, it was like, yeah, my sister's going to come. She's fat. She's big. So that's part of like the rational, because my family is very, very judgmental about weight. So growing up, it was kind of like, it was almost worse to be fat than to use drugs. Yeah, basically. I feel like in my family, you get more slack for committing crimes and for using drugs than for having a food addiction and being fat, because of my family's totally about appearances. And if you're fat, you don't fit that stereotypical like beauty, right? So on that aspect, I feel like for me personally, that fear is kind of rational. However, I feel like the irrational part is like, if your friends really care about you, they want to see you to see you. They like your personality. They want to spend time with you. And so rationally, I know that they're not just going to be like, oh my gosh, you're disgusting. I don't ever want to see you again because you gained 40 pounds, right? And if they said that, they're not really your friends anyway. So anyways, let me know what you guys think about that one. What's the next one we have? Oh, someone saying something in public about your weight. And I think a lot of these fears just come from shame. So like knowing that I don't fit the stereotypical bill of beauty, having self-worth, self-concept issues, having a family that had issues around my weight since I was a baby. Like my grandma put me on a diet when I was 2 years old, and it was not in a healthy way either. Did she get me thin? Yeah, she got me thin. Was I happy? Was it done in a healthy way? Absolutely not. As soon as I got out of my grandma's house, I ate everything and blew up. Like, it was insane. But anyways, people saying something to you in public about your weight, like one of my biggest fears. And it's crazy because the people who have judged me the most on my weight and have said the most negative things about my weight, or comment on like, what diet are you on, or you should try this diet, have always been family members. I haven't had a ton of public scrutiny. When I was younger, I had some boys online that were like, oh, you're fat. But I don't really remember ever being like seriously bullied in school because of my weight. A couple random comments here and there, but not a huge deal. And then most recently, and I was taken aback. I was shocked because most recently I went to Fred Meyer's, which is kind of like a grocery store. They have some clothes and some furniture and stuff as well. But we went to Fred Meyer, and when we were done, we went out to the car, and the way I was standing with the shopping cart, because my baby was in the shopping cart, so we had just pulled up to the car, and his dad was unlocking it so he could put the baby in and I could start loading the groceries. And I was standing there with my baby, and there was a truck that came down like the lane, I guess, the aisle for that parking. And I wasn't fully in the road, like I wasn't blocking him, but he would have to go around me a small amount. Like he couldn't just go straight down the lane. And so I was trying to hurry and move out of his way, but I guess I didn't move fast enough. And he was like, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something about move your fat ass or get your fat ass out of the way or something like that. And I was mortified. Like, I'm usually a pretty calm and collected person. Like, I don't react out of anger most of the time. I usually can keep a pretty level head and hold it together, but I literally screamed back at him. And I don't remember what I said, but something like, fuck off, or I don't know, something like that. And Andrew, Andrew is my fiance. So Andrew noticed that I was visibly upset and he kind of saw me screaming. He was like, what happened? And I was like, nothing, nothing, nothing. And he's like, what happened? What happened? What happened? And I was like, please don't talk to me about it right now. And it wasn't because I was mad at him. It was because I was so embarrassed that I was about to burst into tears. And I really didn't want to do that in public. And I really didn't want to do it in front of my baby. And I really didn't want to do it in front of my niece, Ashley. So anyways, that happened, and I ended up telling him about it later, and I like cried, and every time I talked about it for like 5 times, I cried, and nobody was even around to hear him besides my family. I don't really think anybody else heard, but I was so mortified. So if anybody else has that fear, I would say that fear is relatively rational. People aren't always judging you. People aren't always going to be like, you're this or you're that. And most people don't really have the balls to say it right to your face. And I guess he wasn't technically to my face, but in person, most people don't have the balls to say that kind of stuff. So I feel like you don't have to worry about it constantly, but it is definitely something that can happen. Oh, another thing that kind of fits with that. So this would be the 5th fear. Another thing that kind of fits with that is being around young kids. So one of the biggest problems with being around young kids is, like I talked about earlier, their lack of a filter. And they don't mean it to be rude. They don't mean it to be nasty. They're not trying to hurt your feelings. It's just, a question or a statement. And I have watched kids several times in my life, and there's a certain age range where they don't really know better yet, right? And so I have received questions like, why are you so fat? Or you're fat, and they run off giggling, things like that. And it's not to be mean, it's just, especially if they don't grow up in a family that has multiple overweight people or an obese person that they see regularly, it's so different to them. So they're just kind of like, why are you like this? Why is your stomach so big? Like, why are you so big? And so that's another big fear too, because even though they don't mean it harshly, if you're in a public setting, like let's say you take the kids to the park or you're at a grocery store and a little kid's like, why are you so fat? And then everybody looks at you. All eyes are on you, and it's just a pretty embarrassing moment. So I think that's all I'm going to go over for fat fears right now, or fat girl fears for right now, because this video is getting pretty long, but there will definitely be a part 2. So if you guys like this video, please subscribe. Leave your comments below, give it a thumbs up, or you can give it a thumbs down if you don't like it. Either way, it's good for me. And in the comments, let me know what your fears are. Thanks, guys. Bye.